evening and welcome to Empowerment with Elysia. On tonight's show, I have Ginny Jablonski, one of my dear friends located in Arizona in the United States. Ginny is a human and horse animal whisperer. She is an inspirational speaker, an author, a podcast host. She does so many things. She's a horse medicine facilitator, and she's going to talk to us about some stuff that I don't usually bring to the table, but I'm really excited to have her on to talk about. She is going to talk about interspecies evolution and consciousness and how she helps animals become more of their sentient sovereign beings. I mean, they're already sentient, obviously, but more of their sovereign beings. So, Ginny, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. We've known each other for a long time, and we've been sort of toying with the idea of having a conversation like this, and it never seemed like the right time. But now, as I say on my podcast, now is the time for interspecies evolution. So I think it's time to talk about it.
Absolutely. And what an interesting time in history, too. There are so many horses. You have a Mustang yourself, and you have her herd right behind you from the Little Book Cliffs. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about Beauty, your Mustang mare?
Well, sure. She came to me in a dream, and I forget exactly. I didn't know I was going to tell the story, or I would have gone back and read my notes and journaling.
Okay,
So I
she just
apologize. I
to the
don't
mind.
remember. I don't remember her exact language, but she came to me in a dream, and she told me she was going to come and live with me, and that I needed to find her. And I said, "Well, who are you, and where do you live?" And she said, "I'm a horse, and you'll don't worry, you'll find me." And I just kept hearing the Little Book Cliffs, the Little Book Cliffs, the Little Book Cliffs. Well, I knew about the Little Book Cliffs from working in Colorado and having clients all around the state of Colorado, and also being an advocate for the wild horse, and working with many nonprofits and writing articles in some of their periodicals and online magazines. So I called someone right away who I know very well, and who also knows people with horses from the Little Book Cliffs. And she said, "I think I might know the horse you're talking about. Give me just a day or two and I'll get back to you." Excuse me. And she called me the next day and said, "Well, one of your clients actually owns the horse right now.
Interesting.
And your client said, yes, you can have the horse." And I'm like, "Wait, like, what horse?"
Who's coming into my house?
What's going on? Well, it turned out that my client had sold the horse to someone, and it just wasn't quite working out. It wasn't a safe situation. She was bolting under saddle. And when she came to us, she was definitely rearing and striking. So it's a good thing she came to us. But it worked out great. And the next morning after that, so like 2 or 3 days later, I got an email with a picture of a black horse named Beauty in my in basket, in my email. And the night before, she came to me again in a dream, and she said, "Black, black, black, black Beauty. I'm Black Beauty." So
That's so
then that morning I
cool.
woke up to that photograph. So that's how she came to live with us. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, we had to get the brand inspector out and all of that. So
Oh, that's really cool. I personally met Beauty. She's a beautiful horse, and it's been fun to get to listen and hear more about her beautiful evolution. And speaking of evolution, tell us, like, define for the audience, for those of them out there that don't understand what you mean by the evolution of interspecies consciousness. Just break that down for us.
well, the name of the podcast is Interspecies Evolution. So, a biologist would identify interspecies evolution as a species evolving. And that doesn't really happen on Earth that much these days, or it hasn't in the last few hundred, decades or so. So, interspecies communication is a term that animal communicators created, I think, not realizing what the actual scientific definition of interspecies was, but they co-opted that. And so, as you know very well, Elysia, when somebody coins a phrase or creates a new word or decides to change the definition, well, we just go with the flow with that. So that's how interspecies communication came about. And the evolution of interspecies consciousness came to me from my soul as an evolution of my own journey. And to me, that means the evolution of the relationship between the species. So, our partnership with animals, and how do we perceive our partnership with animals, and how do we honor their sentience? How do we honor the fact that they, like us, are spirit in a body on a journey?
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So within your podcast, I'm sure you cover a wide range of things. Can you give us an example of one of the things you might cover in your podcast?
Well, the purpose of the podcast is to promote a greater understanding of our own human consciousness, to give people ideas and perspective and insights into other people's journey of awakening and evolution, and how their journey affected their relationship with animals and plants and the earth, as well as other human beings.
Absolutely.
So, exploring what it feels like to go on a journey of awakening, a journey of a remembering that we are spirit in a body. We're not just what the physicists and biologists and anthropologists and sociologists say we are, right?
Yeah,
There's so much more to us. And
absolutely.
then, so there are people that come on and share their human journey. There are very few people, not a lot, who would share, an NDE. I'm only having 2 or 3 of them in the next 3 seasons. But then people who began to spontaneously communicate with animals, or who have communicated with animals since they were born, since they were young. And then people who communicated with animals when they were young, but they were told they were wrong and they shut it down. And then in their adult life, they cannot deny any longer their ability to see and perceive and hear what animals are going through, what animals are experiencing. So I have a wide range of people on my podcast, but it's mostly people who, like you, like me, are very interested in other people's lives and wanting to do good in the world and share information. It's not by any means an instruction manual or indicative of how someone thinks another person should think or believe or go on a journey. It's inspiration. It's inspiration.
I love that. That which comes to us, inspiration. In all of that, what I find interesting is the animal communication portion, like the animal whisper. Over the course of time, I think oftentimes the people who communicate with animals, people would say that they're crazy, right? To one degree or another. But we always, like, I'd say most of us talk to our dogs and talk to our horses and talk to our cats, yet it's like it's put into a different frame. But we know that they understand us. We tell our dog to sit, it sits, lays down, it crawls, it does different things. They do amazing things in agility training. We train dogs as scent animals, and you see these amazing maneuvers with the military, and even horses can be trained for search and rescue for scent work. And I think that's just like the foundation, and then creating an opening, right, for people to hear more and to be able to come deeper within themselves. Like, what are your thoughts with that sort of platform and evolution?
Well, if any of your listeners follow What About Bunny on YouTube or Instagram, what is she? I think she's a sheepadoodle, like a
Okay.
sheepdog and a
Poodle.
poodle mix, right?
Okay.
If anyone follows her, this is a journey of a dog who's being taught to communicate with humans through the use of buttons. So remember a few years
I've seen
ago,
similar with like huskies and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fascinating. Go on.
well, I was just going to say for anyone who hasn't seen it, 10 years ago or maybe even 15, the Christmas cards came out where you could record a little message on the Christmas card, right? And then
Yeah.
send it. Well, the same thing is you can record a word or a sentence and it's in a button. So if the animal or a human being touches the button, presses the button, the recording will sound, right? So it's been said really for years, well, decades that I'm aware of, that I think it used to be that animals can learn 52 words. And now we're
Amazing.
demonstrating that they can learn more than 200 words.
Oh, wow.
But
That's
I
amazing.
take issue with that.
Okay.
I take issue with the idea that scientists are saying that animals are learning words. Because these animals, if you watch them, they are asking questions of their owners. They are saying they need more buttons in order to communicate. They'll go to the box full of buttons. I need more words. I need more words. They are asking existential questions. Why are you a human? Why am I a dog?
That's so fascinating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, of course, I mean, I talk with animals all day, every day, just about. So I believe it's very true. I think that I was brought up in a world that I wasn't exposed to it. I never bought a self-help book or a spiritual book in my life, and then I had a very extraordinary event, several very extraordinary events that made it impossible for me to deny the psychic abilities that are inherent with every soul on the planet. And, our parents and our family and our teachers all told us it's not true. So a lot of us, excuse me, shut it down. But now, I have no question, I have no doubt, not a shred of doubt, that animals are sentient beings. They have thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and they can communicate that with us if we have ears to hear, if we are willing to hear.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that with us, Jenny. So you help the animals to become more sovereign. So tell us a little bit more about that process. What it is that you mean by them becoming more sovereign?
Well, I don't remember actually using that specific word. I think you use that in your marketing material. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if I, but what I find, and we're going to the very esoteric cutting edge of the work that I do. We're not talking about just normal everyday animal communication. Are you happy? Do you need different food? Do you want a different job?
Fair
Right?
enough.
We're going straight to the very esoteric, right? So I find that animals have similar struggles managing their energy field as people. Most people
Interesting.
don't realize that they're not managing their energy field well, or that they are taking on other people's energy. Some
Mm,
people will say, oh, I'm an empath or I'm a highly sensitive person, but they don't really know what that means from a psycho-spiritual, esoteric perspective. And it's quite actually complicated. And there are 101 reasons why that could be, for sure.
sure.
And it's no different with animals. Oftentimes, animals, through a shock or trauma, have accumulated energy, emotion, fear in particular, in their field, and that prevents them from fully being in the body as we are when we are born, optimally as we are when we are born, or when we are healthy. And the trauma doesn't kick us out from our body. In psychology, that would be called dissociation, right?
Yeah.
And the shaman would call that soul loss, which is,
Interesting.
shaman talk about soul retrieval.
Hmm.
Well, that can be true for animals as well. A lot of cribbing and other behaviors come about because they have had a shock or trauma, And that this can even happen in birth, and people don't, aren't necessarily understanding that those types of traumas can also affect animals. But when we have a lot of fear or emotion trapped in our nervous system, our physical body and our psychospiritual apparatus can begin to experience imbalance, and it doesn't necessarily function as well as it should. And so we have 7 chakras. And we have many different, actually, it's been scientifically proven that there are different energetic constructs within the human body. Yes, it is an esoteric conversation, but there is science to back it up. When we have an imbalance, then we aren't functioning at our fullest potential. And that can mean several things, one of which is that we begin to be at the effect of other people's energy.
Mm.
We might hear their thoughts thinking they're our thoughts. We might
Interesting.
feel their emotion believing that it's our emotion. And our body cannot tell the difference between our emotion and someone else's emotion. You have to be very aware to know when you're feeling something that doesn't belong to you. And the animals, especially in domestication, largely with people who don't necessarily agree with this conversation or the perspective that I'm sharing, and they struggle to be self-aware and self-responsible. They need help. And so that's the work that I do, is help them remember that, like humans, they have guides, and there is an entire realm for them to draw from for support, and to help them remember that they too have a beautiful light within them, the same light within me that I use for my own self-healing if I experience a sadness or a challenge in my life. And they just need to remember. I mean, just is a overused and exceedingly general term, so maybe I should use that word. But helping them remember that they can make choices and set boundaries. Just like children, sometimes when we're young, a lot of us have experienced trauma or abuse at some level. And when we're young, our little psyche determines, some of us, that if we manage the energy in the household, we'll be safe or we'll be fed dinner. And animals do that as well. They love us so unconditionally, they don't want to see us suffer. But nobody has mentioned to them that they can take on our suffering all day long, but it never heals us. It doesn't change the underlying issue, right? The cause for the effect.
Yeah. So what advice would you give people to help support their animals, perhaps?
Well, on my website, I have a free meditation under resources and then free content. So if you go to my website, heartofthehorse.us, and then choose the resources tab and then free content, I have several videos, one of which is called Pink Pillows of Love. And
Ooh.
Elysia, you would not believe the feedback I have gotten. There are easily 20 or 30 testimonials out of the hundreds of testimonials on my website that speak to just the results of using the Pink Pillows of Love exercise with their animal. So that would be number one. It's
First
sort of
place
a
to start.
I'm sorry?
First place to start.
First place to start. It's very similar to like a heart math meditation where you're breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, earth energy up through your feet, focusing on your heart, finding something to be grateful for, just radiating gratitude to yourself first and then to whomever you wish to send gratitude to. Well, I substitute that with asking our higher self to help us send pink pillows of love to the animals. Now, I'm not recommending doing anything to the animals because they are sovereign. And if we're going to do something to them, we should have their permission. They should be able to choose yes or no. I want your help. I don't want your help. I've had a horse tell me, no thanks, I'm good being angry, you know? So when we do that, if we just offer it to them, just as if you had a crying child in front of you and you know you can't walk up to them and give them a bear hug and make them stop crying because they're throwing a tantrum, but you can hold out a little soft, minky blanket and say, "Here, honey, do you want this?" And they can choose to receive that to soothe themselves. And that's the frequency that I am recommending, is offering this frequency blanket. It's like a little pink cotton candy cloud of love, and it sort of hovers in the air near their auric field, and they can choose to receive it if they want to.
Oh, that's beautiful. Choosing to receive. It's an important thing. I think that humans in general oftentimes struggle with that, giving, like honoring the receival, because we are well intended, but sometimes a person or an animal is not in a space for advice or for healing. And we need to just honor people and animals where they are, right? Which can be difficult sometimes when we see others suffering, that we want what is best for them. But if we don't honor their process, then we are operating a bit out of our own ego and expectation.
Yeah. I would say oftentimes the human perspective is, I must fix my animal. There's something wrong with my animal, instead of honoring that maybe they had an experience, or maybe they have an opinion, or maybe they don't actually want to do what you want them to do. That's entirely possible.
Yeah, help can look different for people and for animals than what we think that it should, which is why a conversation is so important, and why having outside facilitators can also be extremely important, to have that neutral perspective, or just a talent and skill set that we don't necessarily have. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Absolutely.
Speaking of all of that, you touched a little bit on trauma and how trauma can inhibit how we come back into our souls. I forget exactly how it is that you articulated it. Help me out here.
Well, there are 40 miles of nerves in the human body.
40 miles.
40
That's
miles
crazy.
of nerves, end to end, 40 miles. And within the nerves is a nanoparticulate network of tiny little crystalline matrix. And just like the silica in our computer hard drives and on our motherboards, it's like a vast nano computer system in our body. And it holds our unresolved memories,
Hmm.
unprocessed memories, which, everybody's really into mind, body, and somatic release. Well, that works because the body expresses what the mind has not yet processed, the memories, and including shock and trauma, and challenges that we haven't yet processed, people we haven't forgiven,
Mm.
right? And a lot of times the forgiveness needs to come to us, right?
Ourselves? Yes, ourselves first, definitely. I'm
Right.
glad you mentioned
Yeah.
that.
And it's so interesting that you ask this question, because this is how, one of the ways that I found out that I really had extraordinary ability. At first was, I heard a lot, obviously, but when I touched people, I tapped into or activated that vast computer system, the nervous system in the body. And I could see, like a full color movie, the trauma and unresolved wounds of the
Mm.
people. And that's really how I began to really focus on trauma and consciousness, and go on a very extensive journey of education, studying many different kinds of spiritual philosophies, protocols, healing modalities, you name it, because I was able to see, sense, and feel quite a bit more than most of the protocols defined, really.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's only been recently, well, I think it was maybe in the 60s, when scientists, and forgive me, I don't remember their name, from I think it was Eastern Europe, discovered the microtubules. They're called microtubules. But Roger Penrose, who received the Nobel Prize, and Stuart Hameroff, who was PhD anesthesiologist as well as I think psychologist, wrote a book together really highlighting the microtubules within the nervous system in the 90s. And so they were bringing that out at the same time. Stephen Porges and Vessel Bessel van der Kolk were bringing their books forward. You know, The Body Doesn't Lie, The Body Keeps the Score, the polyvagal theory, all of that, right? I mean, many people in the last couple of decades have begun to really talk about this, but nobody really broke down the science until Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose really brought it out in their book.
I'm glad. It's always fun to get to hear more of the backstory to how this all evolved throughout history. What would be some of the steps you would recommend to people if they're just starting their journey in unfolding this within themselves, the trauma, and in connection to soul remembrance, as you've said before?
Well, I come at this a little bit differently than most people who take a metaphysical approach. I believe strongly that we need to be more self aware, to not really reach for the quick fix or the shiny new healing modalities. And I think largely over time, these processes are proven over time not to be effective long term. And that is, I think, because we bypass what is really important. And I think from my perspective, for me on my journey, what helped me and the people that I work with on a daily basis, excuse me, is the self awareness and understanding our humanness and understanding our psyche and our subconscious and how it works and the nervous system. And going on a path of remembering that, really just basic education in our humanness and how we have accumulated these traumas, and then realizing that being in unforgiveness keeps us in a prison, not the other person. And that
Definitely.
forgiveness is really setting ourselves free. And if we do that first and we begin to understand where our thoughts come from and begin to develop discernment as to whether or not our thoughts are ours or someone else's, whether or not our feelings are ours or someone else's, then we can go into the basic energetic awareness. And I think anyone who is a practitioner or offering services should have at least that. And unfortunately, it's not how it's done. And I'm trying to shift the focus and I'm trying to create a conversation around that because I feel very strongly about this topic.
Yeah, so just having healthy conversations and starting at a foundational level sounds like that it's the best course of action.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you've written a couple of books, or is it just the one? I forget. Do you want to talk a
Well,
little bit about that one?
I've contributed to an anthology, and I do have two books in the making. One about Beauty. So Beauty, my formerly wild horse, her book is memorialized in an anthology called Animal Prints on My Soul, published by Absolute Love Publishing. And then I have a book in the works that chronicles her journey from the time she arrived here and all of the amazing ups and downs of that relationship. And we're just now getting to a place where we we don't have a giant wall between us. You know, her anger, her rage at her
Yeah.
experience, being rounded up. And when she was young, when she was 3 years old, there was a prior roundup that she experienced where some of her herd was rounded up. So that's chronicled in a book that I'm writing now, and it's by the same name, Healing Beauty. And then another book which shares my journey.
It'll be excellent when those get to come out. So, is there anything else that you would like to bring forward that is just like you're really passionate about that you'd like to share with the audience?
Right now, what I think about when I wake up and before I go to sleep at night is how to inspire other people, how to
Mm,
validate other people, how to help people feel worthy and safe, how to help people know that this type of healing can happen for everyone. That, I on my journey, I feel like I hit up against every stumbling block a person could possibly hit up against on their journey, and I've overcome all of them. I've been so
beautiful.
lucky to have a very supportive husband, and I've been able to travel around the world and work with many, many different healing professions, healing modalities, indigenous cultures, you name it. And yes, I had the benefit of psychic awareness, but that helped me to weed out those protocols that were not effective, at least for me.
Yeah.
And I share very openly, um, very consistently about my journey and what worked for me. And I also share other perspectives as well, because I learned a lot of other things on my journey, and it might not have worked for me, but if people have questions about other things, I can share those experiences as well. So that's the purpose of the podcast.
No, that's fantastic. And where can they find your podcast again?
Interspeciesevolution.com.
Seems easy peasy. And are you still doing coaching these days?
Well, I've never been a coach. I'm not certified as a coach. I do equine medicine facilitation. I do animal communication, intuitive work.
I feel like it's just like a different sort of coaching. Just that it doesn't have the certification, but you know what I mean. It's just you're still
Yeah.
helping to facilitate the growth and learning and evolution of people in their journey. I feel like
Yeah.
it's really at the end of the day.
Yeah. I partner with Barnes in Maryland, just near Baltimore, Maryland, Fort Collins, Colorado, and just outside of Sacramento, California, as well as in Texas. So, and then my place here in Arizona.
Look at that, folks. She's all over the place. So many fantastic opportunities for you to join with Ginny and different horses, different animals in your own evolution. So, Ginny, our last question always is, who inspires you in the world today?
All of my guests on my podcast.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, and I've gathered about 3 dozen, and there are probably another dozen or so more that are coming forward. People who have overcome adversity and triumphed. I think they are wonderful messengers. I think they are true examples of the ability to to shift your perspective, to wake up one day and make a choice to make a change and be willing to shift your perspective.
It's a
I think they
beautiful.
talk in coaching and in other theaters, about having beginner's mind. I think
Yes, absolutely.
if we're stuck not in beginner's mind, not much will change. But
That
for
is for
those of
sure.
us who are willing every day to wake up and say, what's going to happen today? I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing
Yeah.
to change. Those are people that inspire me.
Here to that. That's a beautiful sentiment. And I really appreciate you sharing that and sharing everything else in your wisdom on this evening with the audience. And I really hope that people have found inspiration with you and find you to partake in the different services, to read your book, and to definitely listen to your podcast. So, Ginny, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I so appreciate you as always. It's wonderful to see you, my dear friend.
Much love.
Thank you. And everyone watching, thank you so much for watching either live or in the rerun in the future. And if you want to listen more, next week we'll have Laurel Marr. She's joining us. She is here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and she's a death doula, which I find very fascinating and I think is so helpful for people in such a time of grief and transition. So until next time, we will see you all later. Bye, guys.